The room was silent, except for the steady, cold sound of machines. Beep, beep, beep. A rich man, a powerful millionaire, lay helpless on the hospital bed. His body was covered with wires and tubes. His chest rose and fell slowly, weakly, as if every breath could be his last. Around him stood not one, not two, but 20 doctors. They wore white coats, masks, and gloves. Some held clipboards, others checked machines, but all of them looked worried. Their faces told a story. They were fighting, but losing. One doctor leaned close to another and whispered something. The second shook his head. A third wrote something quickly on a chart, but his hand trembled. None of them smiled. None of them looked confident. It was strange. This man had everything in life: money, power, status. His name was known all over the city. People respected him. People feared him. He was the kind of man who could buy anything. But in this moment, lying pale and weak on a hospital bed, his wealth was useless. The doctors had tried everything. Expensive machines beeped around him. Rare medicines had already been injected. Experts had flown in from different countries. But nothing worked. The man's life was slipping away. There was nothing money could do. Outside the room, the hospital corridor was crowded. Reporters with cameras and microphones waited, their eyes fixed on the closed doors. Security guards stood firm, holding people back. Nurses moved quickly, whispering updates to one another. The whole city wanted to know what would happen next. Would the millionaire live, or would this be the end of his story? Inside, the air was heavy, almost choking. Every second felt long. Every beep of the machine felt like a countdown. The man's family stood close to the glass wall. His wife pressed her hands together and prayed. Tears ran down her face, smudging her makeup. His grown-up children, 2 sons and a daughter, looked helpless. They had always seen their father strong, commanding, full of life. But now he looked fragile, almost gone. One son shouted at the doctors, "Why are you just standing there? Do something. Save him. He's my father." The doctors didn't answer. They couldn't, because the truth was painful. They didn't know what to do anymore. The daughter cried out,
"Al, you are 20 doctors?"
20, and none of you can help. What is all this education for? What are these machines for? Still silence. The doctors kept their eyes down. They avoided the family's gaze. They knew the truth. The situation was slipping out of their hands. Minutes passed. The millionaire's breathing became weaker. His skin turned pale. His lips trembled slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. His hands lay still on the bed, his veins thin and dark under the hospital light. One nurse wiped the sweat from his forehead. Another checked his pulse and looked at the doctors. Her eyes showed fear. The pulse was fading. The head doctor, a man with years of experience, finally spoke in a low voice. "We have tried everything. His body is not responding. I am sorry." Those words hit the family like a knife. The wife fell to her knees. The children held each other and cried. The reporters outside pressed their faces against the glass, eager to catch any word, any image. It was almost certain now. The great man, the powerful millionaire, was about to die. But then something strange happened. Far in the corner of the room, where nobody was looking, stood a woman. She wore a plain uniform. Her clothes were not expensive, her shoes were simple, her hands rough from years of work. She was the housekeeper, a woman who had worked in the millionaire's mansion for many years. Nobody noticed her. To the doctors, she was invisible. To the family, she was just staff. But her eyes, sharp and watchful, were fixed on the man lying on the bed. She had seen him every day at home. She had watched him eat, walk, sit, talk. She knew his habits, his small struggles, the little things he often ignored. And now, as she looked closely at him, she noticed something the doctors did not. His fingers. They twitched in a strange way. Not like normal movement. A pattern. A signal. Her heart raced. She leaned forward, squinting her eyes. She remembered something weeks ago in the mansion. She had seen him sitting in his chair, his hands shaking in that same way. She had thought it was small, unimportant. The doctors back then had waved it off. But now it seemed important. Her eyes moved to his lips. They were moving very slowly, like he was trying to whisper, but no sound came out. Again her memory flashed. She remembered one evening when he sat in the garden, trying to speak but only moving his lips silently. The housekeeper felt a chill. This is not new, she thought. This is something everyone missed. But who would listen to her? She was just a servant. The doctors still stood around, hopeless. The family cried. The reporters waited. The whole world thought it was over. But the housekeeper's eyes burned with determination. She couldn't stay quiet. She couldn't watch him die like this. She took a step forward. Her shoes tapped the floor softly, but the sound felt loud in the silent room. A nurse turned her head, surprised. A doctor frowned. The housekeeper's heart pounded. She wanted to speak, to shout, to tell them what she saw. But would they listen? The question hung heavy in the air. Could this simple woman, with no degree, no medical knowledge, see something that 20 trained doctors had missed? The suspense grew. The family noticed her now. The wife's tearful eyes narrowed. Why is she stepping forward? The daughter's face twisted with anger. This is not her place. One of the sons clenched his fists. A doctor whispered, "Why is she here? Take her out." But the housekeeper did not move back. She stood tall, her eyes still fixed on the man she had served for years. She saw what others could not, and in that moment, the whole story was about to change. The news of the millionaire's condition spread quickly through the hospital. Nurses whispered in corners. Guards tried to control the crowd outside. Reporters raised their cameras higher, hoping for a glimpse. But inside the glass walls of the ICU, all that mattered was family. The man's wife stood closest to the bed. She was once strong, once proud, always walking beside her husband in expensive clothes, always smiling for the cameras. But now she looked broken. Her hands shook as she held them together, whispering prayers under her breath. Her mascara ran down her face. Her hair was messy. Her lips trembled. She pressed her forehead against the glass, whispering again and again, "Please, God, please don't take him. Not like this. Not now." Her voice cracked, and she slid down the wall to her knees. Their daughter stood beside her mother. She was young, elegant, used to luxury. But in this moment, she was just a frightened girl. Tears filled her eyes, blurring her vision. She pressed her palm against the glass, as if trying to reach her father through it. "Papa, please wake up," she whispered. "You promised me you would dance at my wedding. You promised." Her voice grew louder, desperate. Reporters outside leaned forward, trying to capture her words. Guards held them back. One of the sons, tall and angry, stormed toward the group of doctors. His fists clenched, his jaw tight. He pointed a finger at the head doctor. "You call yourself the best? You call yourself experts? Then why is he lying there like this? Do something. You can't just give up." His voice echoed in the room. His eyes burned with rage and fear. The doctors stood silent. They had faced many angry families before, but this one was different. This was the family of a man who had power in the city, power even outside it. Yet still, here in this hospital, power meant nothing. The young man's anger only grew. He grabbed the edge of a doctor's coat. "My father gave millions to this hospital. He built wings for your research. And this is how you repay him? Standing here like statues?" Nurses rushed forward, trying to calm him. His brother pulled him back. "Enough. Don't make this worse," the second son said, though his own voice shook. His eyes were red, his lips pressed tight. He turned to the doctors, his tone softer, but no less painful. "Please, please, he is not just our father. He is everything to us. Save him. I'll give anything. Money, land, power, just save him." The head doctor looked at him with sorrow. "It is not about money. We have tried everything. His body is not responding. We cannot do more." The son's legs almost gave way. He leaned against the wall, burying his face in his hands. The wife crawled forward, her knees scraping the cold hospital floor. She reached the doctor's shoes and clutched them with trembling hands. You are lying. There must be something. You cannot just stand there and watch him die. He is my husband. He is the father of my children. He is the reason we are alive. Please, doctor, please save him. Her voice broke, echoing like a cry of an animal in pain. The room fell into heavy silence. Even the reporters outside stopped shouting for a moment, stunned by her raw grief. The doctors looked at each other. Their hearts felt heavy. They were trained to heal, to save lives, but sometimes even the best training, the best technology, the best medicine could not fight death. Still, they could not bring themselves to say the final words. Not yet. The daughter dropped to the floor beside her mother, wrapping her arms around her. She rocked back and forth, sobbing, "Mama, don't say that. Papa will live. He has to. He promised us. He never breaks promises." Her words were fragile like glass, but deep inside she knew her father was slipping away. The two sons stood at the glass wall again. They pressed their hands against it, looking at their father through the reflection of their own faces. Inside the room, the millionaire's chest rose and fell weakly. His eyelids fluttered. His lips moved without sound. His hands twitched faintly, barely noticeable. The sons knocked on the glass. "Papa, it's us. Wake up. Fight. You always told us to fight, remember? Don't leave us now." But the man did not move. His breathing slowed even more. One of the nurses shook her head, looking at the doctors. Everyone could see it. Time was running out. The family broke apart in grief. The wife sobbed uncontrollably. The daughter's cries turned into sharp screams that echoed through the corridor. One son punched the wall with his fist until his knuckles bled. The other sank to the ground, holding his head in his hands, whispering, "No. No, not him. Not today." The sound of grief filled the hospital. Patients in nearby rooms turned their heads. Nurses tried to keep order. Guards pushed reporters further back, but nothing could hide the truth. The family was watching their rock, their shield, their king fall right before their eyes, and yet, in that storm of grief, one pair of eyes stayed sharp. The housekeeper, she stood silently in the corner, her hands clenched at her sides. She had no right to speak in this room. She had no place among the rich and the powerful. But she loved this family in her own quiet way. She had raised the children, cooked their food, cared for the mansion, and watched over the man for years. Now, as she looked at his twitching fingers and his trembling lips, something deep inside her whispered, "This is not the end. Not yet." But would anyone listen to her? The wife's sobs grew louder. The daughter clung to her. The sons looked broken. The doctors prepared to step back, ready to record the time of death when the final moment came. Everything pointed to one truth: the family's hope was gone. Yet in that very moment of despair, when everyone else had given up, Housekeeper's eyes caught something the family and the doctors had missed. And with that, the story was about to take a turn no one could have imagined. The air inside the intensive care room was heavy, almost choking. The smell of antiseptic filled every corner. Machines beeped rhythmically, but the sound brought no comfort. It was more like the slow ticking of a clock, counting down toward an end that no one wanted to face. The 20 doctors, once full of confidence, now stood scattered around the bed. Their white coats seemed less like a symbol of hope and more like a reminder of defeat. Their faces told a story no one dared to say out loud. The head doctor finally broke the silence. His voice was low, almost trembling. "We have given every medicine. We used the strongest machines. We tested his blood, his heart, his brain. Nothing responds. His body is shutting down." The words fell heavy, like stones in water. The family froze. The wife's hand stopped moving. The daughter gasped loudly. One of the sons slammed his fist against the glass wall so hard that even the reporters outside jumped. "You're lying," he shouted. "You're supposed to be the best doctors in the world. My father trusted you. This hospital trusted you. And now you tell us there's nothing left? The head doctor did not answer. He lowered his eyes, ashamed. Another doctor, younger, stepped forward. He tried to sound calm, but his voice cracked. We tried everything possible. His organs are failing, one by one. We cannot save him, the daughter screamed. She rushed toward the doctors, her tears falling fast. Then why are you standing here? Why are you 20 people here if you can't do anything? Leave. Just leave us with him. Nurses tried to hold her back, but her cries filled the room. Her mother wrapped her arms around her, pulling her close. Both of them sinking to the cold floor. The second son, quieter than his brother, looked at the doctors with eyes full of broken hope. His voice was soft, but it cut deep. So, this is it. For all your studies, your degrees, your machines, my father will still die like an ordinary man? Is that what you were saying? No one replied. Silence answered for them. The eldest son still raged. He grabbed the head doctor's coat, shaking him. You think you can walk out of here and tell the world you failed? You think people will forgive you? My father gave everything for this hospital, and this is how you repay him. Guards rushed inside, pulling the young man away before he could do more. The head doctor only whispered, almost to himself, "We are not gods. Sometimes, death wins." Those words sent shivers through the room. Death wins. A phrase nobody wanted to hear, but everyone feared. Minutes dragged by, each one heavier than the last. The doctors moved away from the bed, slowly gathering near the wall. They whispered among themselves, but their eyes told the truth. They were giving up. The wife crawled on her knees to the side of the bed. She clutched her husband's hand, cold and limp. No, you can't leave me. You promised me you'd grow old with me. You promised. Her tears fell on his skin, but he did not react. His chest rose faintly, almost unnoticeable now. The daughter knelt on the other side of the bed, holding his other hand. Papa, open your eyes, please. Just once. Look at me. Say something. Anything. But the man lay still, as if trapped between this world and the next. One of the nurses checked the monitor. The numbers were falling slowly but surely. She looked at the doctors, shaking her head. It's only a matter of time. The family heard those words. Their cries grew louder, sharper, echoing through the hall. Reporters outside pushed closer against the glass, cameras flashing. The entire hospital seemed frozen. Waiting for the moment when the machines would flatline, the doctors began preparing papers. One reached for the clipboard to write the official statement. Another prepared the final form, the one that would record the millionaire's death. They had seen this scene many times before, but this time was heavier. This was not just another patient. This was a man who had power, money, and the best care money could buy. If even he could not be saved, what hope was left for ordinary people? The eldest son noticed the doctor's writing. He stormed forward again. What are you doing? Don't you dare write those words. He's not gone yet. He's still breathing, can't you see? The head doctor placed a hand on his shoulder. Son, I know this is painful, but keeping him here is only prolonging his suffering. His body is tired. Sometimes letting go is the only mercy. The son shook him off violently. No, you're wrong. He is a fighter. He's not ready to die. His shouts broke the already fragile air. Nurses backed away. Security guards moved closer. The wife begged her son to stop, but her voice was drowned in sobs. The doctors, tired and defeated, moved back further. Some stared at the ground. Others pretended to check machines, though they knew it was useless. They had given up, and that was the failure. Not just the failure to heal the man, but the failure to see more. The failure to look beyond charts, beyond machines, beyond their own pride. They had forgotten that sometimes. Answers are not in books, not in computers. Not in tests, but in small details. In human eyes, in observations, and in the corner. The housekeeper still stood silently. Her gaze never left the man on the bed. She saw his fingers twitching again, that strange little pattern. She saw his lips moving, silently forming shapes. And her heart screamed inside her, they are wrong. They don't see it. But I do. She wanted to shout it out, to run forward, to tell them all. But fear held her back. She was just a servant. What if they laughed at her? What if they threw her out? Still, her eyes stayed sharp. She was the only one who had not failed yet. The family wept. The doctors prepared to close the case. The reporters whispered outside. The world was ready to write the headline. Millionaire dies despite 20 doctors. But the story was not finished, because the housekeeper's eyes had caught something, and it was about to change everything. The room was breaking apart in grief. The millionaire's wife was on her knees, holding his cold hand. The daughter clung to her mother, crying loudly, her sobs shaking her small frame. The two sons stood restless and helpless, their anger burning but their strength useless. The doctors had stepped back. Their eyes no longer searched for answers. Some whispered about preparing the final report. Others glanced at the clock, waiting for the inevitable moment when the machines would left laning. It felt like hope had left the room. But in the farthest corner of the ICU, almost hidden by the shadows, stood a woman no one paid attention to. She was not wearing a white coat. She did not carry charts or stethoscopes. Her clothes were plain, her shoes worn out, her hands rough with years of work. She was the housekeeper, the woman who had spent most of her life serving the millionaire's family. She cleaned their mansion, cooked their meals, ironed their clothes, cared for their children. She had lived in silence, always in the background. And even here, in this hospital room, she blended into the corner like a shadow nobody noticed. But her eyes were different. They were not tired. They were not defeated. They were sharp, focused, watching. She had been with the family for years. She knew the man lying on the bed better than most of the doctors in that room. She had seen him in his strongest moments and in his weakest. She knew his habits, his moods, his little quirks. She had been there when he laughed, when he was angry, and when he sat quietly alone. And now, as she stood silently, she noticed something everyone else ignored. His fingers. They twitched again. Not a random shake, not the kind that comes from weakness. It was rhythmic, patterned, almost like his body was trying to tell him something. Her heart pounded. She stepped forward slightly, straining her eyes. She leaned closer, trying not to draw attention. His lips moved again, slowly, weakly, like he was whispering without sound. The housekeeper froze. Memories flooded back. She remembered one evening, weeks ago, when she had walked into the library with his tea. He had been sitting in the armchair, pale and sweating. His lips had moved in that same silent way. His hands had twitched just like this. She had thought he was tired, maybe dizzy. She had called the doctor then, but after a quick check, they told her it was nothing serious. But now, here he was, in the same state, only worse. And the doctors, these 20 trained experts, were too busy watching machines to notice the signs she remembered so clearly. Her hands trembled. She wanted to shout, "Look! Look at his hands. Look at his lips. You're missing something." But fear tightened her throat. She was just a servant, a housekeeper. What if they laughed at her? What if they threw her out? The family was already broken. Would they even listen? Still, she could not look away. She saw what others could not. She remembered what others had forgotten. And in that moment, she realized she might be the only one who could save him. She took a slow step forward. The sound of her shoe tapping against the hospital floor was soft, but in the silence. It echoed. The daughter, still crying, looked up. Her red, swollen eyes narrowed. Why is she moving closer? One of the sons noticed too. His anger flared. What are you doing here? He snapped, his voice sharp. This is not your place. Go back. The wife, lost in grief, barely lifted her head. She saw the woman, but said nothing. Her eyes were blank, drowned in sorrow. The doctors turned to. One of them frowned, whispering to another, why is she even inside? This is an ICU. She should be outside with the others, but the housekeeper did not move back. She stood straighter, though her heart pounded. Her eyes stayed locked on the man. She took another step closer to the bed. The eldest son stepped in front of her, blocking her path. His eyes were red with anger and tears. "Stop. Do you think this is a show? Do you think you can play doctor now? Leave before I have you thrown out." The housekeeper's lips trembled. She wanted to answer, but fear gripped her. For years she had served quietly, never raising her voice, never daring to argue. And now, in the most important moment, her voice refused to come out. But her eyes, they spoke louder than words. They were fixed on the man, full of urgency, full of something the son couldn't understand. The head doctor stepped forward. "Please, take her outside." "She cannot be here." A nurse nodded, moving toward her. But just as the nurse reached her arm, the housekeeper suddenly found her courage. Her voice burst out, shaking but strong. "Wait. Please, just wait. Look at him. Look at his hands. Look at his mouth. Something is wrong. This is not what you think." Everyone froze. The room went silent again, but this time all eyes turned to her. The doctors stared in disbelief. The family blinked at her, stunned. Even the nurse stopped mid-step, surprised by the fire in her tone. The eldest son growled, his anger boiling over. "Enough. You don't know anything. You are just a servant. Don't stand here pretending you see more than doctors." But the housekeeper didn't back down. Her voice grew stronger. "I may be a servant, but I know him. I have seen him like this before. You don't see it because you don't know him. But I do." Her words cut through the room like lightning. The wife finally lifted her head, her swollen eyes landing on the housekeeper. For the first time, her expression shifted, confusion mixed with curiosity. The doctors exchanged glances, some annoyed, some unsure. But the housekeeper stood her ground, her chest rising and falling with each heavy breath. For the first time since this nightmare began, the silence in the room was not of defeat. It was of shock, of curiosity, of something unexpected breaking through despair. The housekeeper had stepped out of the shadows. And in that moment, everyone wondered, could she, a simple woman with no degree, no training, no status, really see what 20 doctors had missed? The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. The hospital room had become a battlefield of silence. The 20 doctors stood frozen, their authority challenged by a woman who should not have spoken. The family stared at her, shocked that the quiet servant who once blended into the background had suddenly found her voice. And in the middle of it all, the millionaire lay still, machines beeping beside him, his body trembling with faint, strange signs that only one person seemed to notice. The housekeeper took a deep breath. Her chest rose and fell heavily. She had said the words she was afraid to say, and now everyone was watching. The eldest son glared at her, his fists clenched. "You're wasting our time," he barked. But the youngest son, who had been silent until now, looked at her carefully. His eyes softened for a moment, as if wondering whether she might actually mean something. The wife, broken and pale, finally whispered, "What? What do you see?" Those words struck the housekeeper's heart. For years, the wife had hardly spoken to her directly, only to give instructions. But now, in this moment, she was asking her a question. The housekeeper's voice shook, but she spoke. "His hand. It's moving. Not shaking randomly, it's like he's trying to point, or write, or warn us." Her eyes flicked to his lips. "And his mouth? Look closely. He's forming words. Not sounds, but shapes. He's trying to say something." A hush swept across the room. Some doctors leaned closer, suddenly alert. Others shook their heads, refusing to believe. One of them scoffed, "That's nothing, just muscle reflex." "Common in patients with low oxygen?" Another added, "Yes, involuntary twitching. It means nothing. Don't confuse the family." But the housekeeper shook her head firmly. For the first time, her fear was gone. "No, I've seen this before. Weeks ago, he was sitting in his library, and his hands moved the same way. His lips, too. That was not reflex. That was him. Trying to tell me something." The eldest son let out a bitter laugh. "You expect us to believe you? You, a cleaner? Do you think you're smarter than 20 doctors? Than these machines?" His voice was sharp, but his words trembled. He was angry, but also afraid, because deep inside, a tiny part of him wondered if she might be right. The daughter, her small face wet with tears, suddenly tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom, look at Dad's mouth. He is moving it. I saw it too." The wife turned sharply to her husband. She leaned closer, her tired eyes widening. For the first time, she noticed the faint motion, the whisper of lips that seemed to be spelling out letters. Her own voice cracked. "My God, he is trying to speak." The doctors exchanged uneasy looks. The head doctor cleared his throat. "Even if he moves, it doesn't mean he is conscious. These are reflexes. Please, don't create false hope." But now, the room's energy had shifted. The housekeeper was no longer invisible. The family could see what she saw. The wife looked up at the head doctor, her voice rising. "Then explain it. If it's just a reflex, why does it look like words? Why does it look like letters?" The doctor hesitated. He could not answer. The housekeeper slowly moved closer to the bed. Her steps were careful, respectful, but filled with purpose. No one stopped her this time. She leaned near the millionaire. Her eyes locked on his trembling hand. "Give me a pen," she whispered. Everyone blinked in confusion. "A pen?" One of the nurses repeated. "Yes," the housekeeper said firmly. "Put a pen in his hand. Let him try. He is not finished." "He is trying to tell us something," the eldest son exploded. "This is madness. He can't even breathe properly. You want us to put a pen in his hand? Are you insane?" But the wife looked at the housekeeper with something new in her eyes, something close to belief. Slowly, she nodded. "Do it." The eldest son's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to shout, to throw the woman out. But his mother's words silenced him. A nurse fetched a pen and a piece of paper. Gently, she placed the pen into the weak, trembling hand of the millionaire. At first, nothing happened. His fingers barely curled around it. His wrist shook, unsteady, fragile. The paper lay blank, waiting. The room held its breath. Then slowly, painfully, the hand began to move. It scratched against the paper, shaky and uncertain. At first it looked like nothing, just random lines. The eldest son smirked bitterly, ready to say, "I told you so." But then the lines formed a shape. Not clear, not perfect, but recognizable. A single letter, W. Gasps filled the room. The daughter cried out, "He's writing." The wife clutched her chest. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Even the doctors leaned in, their skepticism crumbling. The hand shook again, dragging the pen across the paper. Another line, another shape. "Oh," the wife whispered, "oh my God. He is spelling something." The hand trembled harder. The pen nearly slipped, but the housekeeper gently steadied the paper. Her eyes fierce with focus. Another letter? R, the daughter sobbed, her voice trembling with hope. "What is he trying to say?" The room was frozen, every eye fixed on the shaky letters forming on the page. Then came the last mark. Weak, broken, but clear enough. N, the paper now read. WORN, the doctor stared, baffled. "What does that mean?" one whispered. The eldest son shook his head. "Nonsense. It's nonsense." But the housekeeper's eyes widened. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew she remembered that day in the library when he had twitched when his lips had moved. She remembered how his hand had reached for the newspaper lying open on the table. The front page headline had been about a fake medicine scandal company selling worn-out, expired drugs. Her heart raced. "It's not nonsense," she whispered. "He's warning us." The wife's voice shook. "Warning us? About what?" The housekeeper's eyes darted to the table, filled with bottles and 4 bags. The medicines, the injections, the drugs keeping him alive. She swallowed hard. About them. About what's being put into him. Something is wrong. The room went deadly silent. The family stared at the medicines. The doctors shifted uncomfortably, their faces tight. And suddenly, the beeping of the machines grew louder, faster. More urgent, like the millionaire's body was fighting against something inside him. The daughter screamed. The wife clutched her husband's arm. The housekeeper's voice rang out. He is not dying naturally. He is telling us something here is killing him. The doctors froze. The family gasped. And for the first time, the possibility entered everyone's mind. What if this wasn't just sickness? What if the housekeeper was right? What if the millionaire wasn't losing the battle against his body, but against something far more dangerous? The word Warren stared back at them from the page like a haunting clue, and everyone knew. Nothing in that room would ever be the same again. The word on the paper sat like a shadow in the room. Warren. At first it looked harmless, just for shaky letters scratched by a dying hand. But everyone felt its weight. It was more than a word. It was a warning. The wife stared at it, her lips trembling. The daughter clung to her mother's arm, frightened. The eldest son paced, restless, as if he wanted to tear the paper apart and forget it existed. But the housekeeper's eyes never left those letters. She knew. She had seen something before. She had carried the memory in silence, afraid it would mean nothing. But now that memory screamed in her mind. She remembered the night, weeks ago. The millionaire had sat in his study, surrounded by books and papers. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. He had reached for the newspaper, but dropped it, his hand shaking. She had picked it up for him. The headline had been bold. Expired medicines sold and secret patients at risk. The millionaire's eyes had widened. He had tried to speak, but no sound came. His lips had moved, forming silent words. His hand had twitched, writing in the air. And though she had not understood at that moment, she now realized he had been trying to tell her this. That word. That same word. Worn. Not just worn out. Not just expired. Something deeper. Something dangerous. Her chest tightened. She turned slowly, her eyes landing on the table of medicines beside the bed. Bottles for bags, injections, all lined up neatly, shining under the cold hospital lights. Her stomach twisted. She stepped closer. The doctors immediately moved, blocking her way. "Stay back," the head doctor said sharply. "You are not allowed near this equipment." But she didn't stop looking. Her voice was low but strong. "He is warning us. He is telling us something is wrong with those medicines." The eldest son threw his hands in the air. "This is ridiculous. He's half conscious. He could have written anything." "Warn? That doesn't even mean anything. Stop filling our heads with nonsense." The wife turned toward him, her voice trembling but firm. "No, it means something. He was never a man to waste words. If this is what he managed to write, then we have to believe him." The son's face turned red, but he stayed quiet. The head doctor scoffed. "Madam, please. This is absurd. You cannot listen to a servant over trained professionals. Medicines are checked, approved, and monitored. They cannot be expired. They cannot be faulty. We know what we are doing." The housekeeper lifted her chin. "Then why is he dying? Why did 20 of you fail him?" The room fell silent. Her words cut through like a blade. The wife looked at the doctors, her voice weak but sharp. "She's right. You promised me he would live. You promised me money could buy the best treatment in the world. But here he lives, dying before my eyes. And it is she, not you, who has noticed what he's trying to say." The doctors lowered their heads, some ashamed, others angry. The housekeeper's mind raced. If the medicines were the problem, how could she prove it? She was no scientist, no doctor. She was just a woman who had cleaned the millionaire's house for years. But she had seen things. Quiet things. She remembered how sometimes, late at night, the millionaire had refused to take certain pills. He would look at the label and push them away. She remembered how he had whispered, almost to himself, "They think I don't know." But I do. At the time, she hadn't understood. She thought it was the stress of his illness. But now, it made sense. He had known. He had suspected. Her eyes narrowed. The labels, she moved toward the medicine table again. This time, her steps were quicker, more urgent. A nurse tried to stop her, but the wife suddenly raised her hand. Let her. The nurse hesitated, then stepped back. The housekeeper picked up one of the bottles. She held it close to her face, reading the fine print on the label. At first, everything seemed normal: brand name, dosage, manufacturer. But then her eyes caught something small. The expiration date. Her breath caught. She blinked, rubbed her eyes, and read again. The date had passed. Her hand trembled. She grabbed another bottle, then another. Each one she checked made her heart pound harder. Some were expired by months, others by years. Her voice cracked as she spoke. These are expired. He was right. Look. She held the bottles up for all to see. Gasps filled the room. The wife covered her mouth in horror. The daughter clung to her arm, terrified. Even the eldest son's face drained of color. The doctors froze. Some looked shocked. Others looked furious, not at her, but at each other. The head doctor stepped forward, his voice shaking. That's impossible. That cannot be. But she shoved the bottle into his hand. Read it yourself. He did. His eyes widened. His lips trembled. For the first time, the authority in his voice cracked. This must be a mistake. The wife's face twisted with rage. A mistake? You call this a mistake? You've been poisoning him with expired drugs. The eldest son's anger turned into something else: fear. Who gave these medicines? Who approved this? The doctors murmured among themselves, confused, panicked, but the housekeeper's eyes narrowed even more. Because deep in her heart, she felt it. This was no mistake. This was deliberate. She remembered how certain boxes of medicine had been delivered late at night in unmarked vans. She remembered how the millionaire had argued with someone on the phone after those deliveries, shouting words like fraud and danger. She remembered how he had once told her, if something happens to me, watch the medicines. Don't trust everyone. Her throat went dry. She realized it wasn't just bad luck. The millionaire wasn't simply sick. He was being betrayed. Her eyes darted to the door. For the first time, she noticed two men in black suits standing quietly outside the glass window. They weren't family. They weren't doctors. They looked more like guards. But their faces were cold, watchful, and suddenly she knew the danger wasn't only in the bottles. It was in the room. It was around them. The word worn wasn't just about medicine. It was about trust. It was about something rotting, something broken inside this world of power. The housekeeper's suspicion grew into certainty. The millionaire was not just fighting for his life. He was fighting against a secret, and now she was the only one who could carry his message forward. The room was no longer quiet. It buzzed with shock, with fear, with whispers that clawed at the walls. Bottles of expired medicine sat on the table like poisonous evidence, their faded dates shining under the bright hospital lights. The millionaire's wife held one of them in her trembling hands. Her face turned pale, her eyes filled with rage and disbelief. She whispered, almost to herself, How? How could this happen? In the best hospital, with the best doctors, with all our money? How? The daughter cried louder, clinging to her mother's arm. The eldest son slammed his fist against the wall, shouting, This is impossible. Someone made a mistake. Someone is lying. But the housekeeper did not back down. She stood firm, her eyes sharp, her body straight, her voice calm but filled with fire. It's no mistake, she said. He tried to warn us. He wrote the word he knew. He saw what you all ignored. The doctors stood frozen, faces red with shame, fear, or anger. Some looked down at the floor, unable to meet the family's eyes. Others whispered excuses. It must be a supply error. Maybe an old box was mixed by accident. This doesn't happen in real hospitals. But no excuse was strong enough. The truth was already out. And in the middle of the chaos, the housekeeper took a bold step. Literally. She stepped closer to the bed, closer to the man fighting for his life. She placed her hand gently on his arm, her fingers trembling but steady, her eyes lifted to the family, then to the doctors. Then, to the shadowy guards outside the glass window, and she spoke clearly and firmly. "If you all cannot save him, then I will." The room went silent. Every eye turned to her. The eldest son exploded, his face red with fury. You are just a servant. Do you think you can replace 20 doctors? Do you think you can touch him when you can't even pronounce the names of these medicines?" But his voice cracked. He was angry not just at her, but at himself because he had no control, no answers, no courage. The wife did not speak. She only watched the housekeeper, her lips trembling. Something in her eyes shifted, a mixture of doubt and desperate hope. The head doctor straightened his shoulders, trying to regain control. "This is outrageous. If you interfere, you will be removed from this hospital immediately." But the housekeeper turned her gaze on him, and for the first time, he felt small. "You already failed him. You let poison drip into his veins. If I stay quiet now, he will die. And his death will not be natural, it will be murder." Her words struck the room like thunder. The daughter sniffled, her small voice breaking through the heavy silence. "Let her try. Please let her try." The wife turned to her. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She looked at her daughter, then at her husband's pale face, and at the bottles of poison. Finally, she whispered, "Yes, let her." The eldest son shouted again, desperate, "Mother, no. This is insane. You're trusting a maid over trained experts?" But the wife silenced him with a single look. A look that said she had lost trust in the experts, in the machines, in the titles. A look that said she was willing to risk everything on the only person who had truly seen her. Husband and the housekeeper took another bold step closer to the medicine table. She lifted one of the bottles and raised it high. "Throw these away. All of them. They are killing him, not curing him." The doctors gasped. The head doctor's voice cracked with outrage. "You can't. These are prescribed treatments," but the wife interrupted, her voice shaking yet strong. "She's right. Take them away. All of them now." The nurses hesitated, looking at each other, but the wife's eyes burned with command. Slowly, carefully, they began to gather the bottles and bags. The eldest son stormed out of the room, slamming the door. But nobody followed him. The housekeeper leaned closer to the millionaire, whispering softly in his ear, "You are not alone, sir. I see you. I will fight for you. Hold on." His fingers twitched again, faint but deliberate. She smiled through her tears. Then she turned back to the others. "Check his blood. Check his body. If he has been given expired medicines, the signs will be there. Look for infection, for poison, for rejection. Stop looking only at machines. Look at him." Her words hit the doctors with undeniable truth. Some of them exchanged nervous glances. One younger doctor, his face pale but thoughtful, finally stepped forward. "She may be right," he whispered. "If we don't test, we will never know." The head doctor glared at him, but the young doctor didn't stop. "Sir, 20 of us failed. Maybe it's time to listen." The wife looked at the young doctor with desperate hope. "Then do it. Run the tests." Now, the young doctor nodded and began preparing equipment. Nurses followed him. For the first time, there was a spark of action, of change. A possibility. The housekeeper stepped aside, but her eyes never left the millionaire. Outside the glass window, the two guards in black suits exchanged a glance. Their faces were unreadable, but their eyes were sharp, watchful. One of them reached for his phone, typing a quick message. The housekeeper noticed. Her stomach turned cold. She knew those men weren't here for protection. They were here for control, and her bold step had just painted a target on her back. Minutes passed. The young doctor drew blood, checked fluids, and analyzed samples. His hands trembled, his face tense. The machines beeped steadily in the background, marking every weak heartbeat. The housekeeper prayed silently. Finally, the young doctor looked up. His face was pale, his voice shaking. She was right. His blood shows toxic levels. These medicines, they're not only expired, they're contaminated. The room erupted in shock. The wife gasped, nearly collapsing. The daughter cried harder. Some of the older doctors looked ready to faint. The head doctor's face turned crimson, his authority shattered. This can't be true. But the young doctor held up the test results with trembling hands. It is true. He was being poisoned. The wife collapsed into a chair, sobbing. My husband. My husband was dying not because of his sickness, but because of the people who were supposed to heal him. The daughter buried her face in her mother's lap. The housekeeper stepped forward again, her voice strong. He tried to warn us. He fought to tell us. And now we know. But this is only the beginning. Someone wanted him gone. Someone powerful. And they are still watching. Her eyes flicked once more to the window, to the guards in black suits. The wife followed her gaze. She froze. Her face drained of color, because now she too understood. This was not just about medicine. This was about betrayal. And danger was standing right outside their door. The room was quiet now, but not peaceful. The doctors stood in a circle, their faces pale. They had tried everything: new medicines, electric shocks, even rare injections flown in from other countries. Yet the millionaire's condition did not improve. His skin was pale, his breath shallow. The steady beep-beep of the machine sounded weaker each minute. One doctor sighed loudly. We have to face the truth, he said. We cannot save him. Those words cut through the air like a knife. Nurses lowered their heads. Some even wiped tears from their eyes. The reporters outside pressed their ears closer to the door. Sensing a breaking headline, the millionaire dies despite every effort. But in the corner of the room, the housekeeper stood silently, holding a tray of clean towels. She was not supposed to be there during such a critical moment, but no one noticed her. Everyone was too busy with their own despair. Her sharp eyes scanned the room. She had been serving this man for years. She knew his habits, his likes, his allergies, things the doctors never asked about. Suddenly, something felt wrong. She saw the way his lips trembled, the way his fingers curled, the way his eyes flickered, even though he was unconscious. Her heart raced. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "This is not sickness. This is something else." But no one heard her. The doctors were arguing over who would sign the final report. The housekeeper stepped closer to the bed, her hand shaking. She leaned down, almost touching the millionaire's ear, and whispered again, "I know what's happening to you. I've seen this before." For a moment, the millionaire's eyelids moved. Just slightly. As if he had heard her, the housekeeper froze. Her whisper was meant only for herself. But maybe he understood. Maybe his body was trying to send a message, and she was the only one who could read it. The doctors, still blind to her presence, began preparing for the worst. But the housekeeper's eyes burned with determination. She knew she had to speak up, even if no one believed her. The doctors stood together, their white coats glowing under the hospital lights. They spoke in low, serious voices. "It's over," one of them said. "We must call the family," another added. "The world will know soon," a third whispered. The millionaire lay silent on the bed. Machines beeped, but his life seemed to slip away. Everyone believed nothing more could be done. But in the back of the room, the housekeeper took a deep breath. Her hands shook, but her eyes were firm. She could not stay silent anymore. "Excuse me," she said softly. No one looked at her. They were too busy deciding how to announce the man's death. "Excuse me?" she said louder this time, her voice trembling yet strong. The doctors finally turned, surprised to see her still inside. One frowned. "This is not a place for staff. Please leave." But the housekeeper did not move. She stepped closer to the bed and pointed at the millionaire's mouth. "Look at his lips," she said. The doctors glanced, annoyed. "What about them?" one asked. "They're turning a strange color," she said. "It's not the sickness you think. I've seen this before. He ate something that's hurting him." The room went silent. The doctors exchanged puzzled looks. "You're suggesting poison?" one whispered. The housekeeper's heart raced. "Maybe not poison, but something he cannot eat. Something you missed." The doctors leaned closer to the bed, now actually studying his lips, his skin, his hands. For the first time, they noticed the tiny swelling, the rash forming near his neck. This could be an allergy, a young doctor murmured. The older doctors looked shocked. They had been searching for a deadly disease, a hidden virus, a failing organ, but they never considered something so simple, something so human, and now. The housekeeper, someone they had ignored, was the one pointing it out. The room was no longer filled with despair. It was filled with tension. Because if she was right, the millionaire's life could still be saved. The doctor stood frozen. The housekeeper's words echoed in the silent room. An allergy? One repeated, almost in disbelief. Another shook his head. That cannot be. He checked his blood, his heart, his lungs. The housekeeper interrupted quietly, but firmly. You checked his body, but you never asked what he ate. The doctors stared at her. For the first time, they realized this woman knew things they did not. She had been in the mansion, preparing meals, cleaning the dining hall, watching what the millionaire touched every day. She stepped closer, her voice low but urgent. 2 nights ago, he ate seafood at dinner. Lobster, shrimp, oysters. He loves them, but I know he always feels weak after eating them. His skin turns red, his throat feels heavy. I warned him before, but he never listened. A young doctor's eyes widened. He grabbed the chart and flipped through the notes. There's nothing here about allergies. The housekeeper shook her head, 'cause no one asked me. The millionaire's body trembled slightly on the bed. His breath was shallow, but still there. Yes. His lips looked darker now, and the rash on his neck spread. This is not a mystery illness, the housekeeper whispered. This is the seafood. His body is fighting it. If you don't act now, he will not survive. The oldest doctor frowned. His pride hurt. How can we trust the word of a housekeeper? But before he could speak further, the millionaire's monitor gave a long, sharp beep. His body jerked, his chest heaving as if struggling for air. Panic filled the room. Nurses rushed forward. Doctors shouted commands. The machine screamed, and through the chaos, the housekeeper's voice cut through like a knife. You're wasting time. Give him the medicine for an allergy, or he will die right now. The doctors froze. Their hands hovered in the air. The decision was heavy. To trust her or let their pride cost a man his life. The sharp alarm from the machine filled the room. Beep, beep, beep then, a long, frightening sound. The millionaire's chest rose and fell, weaker each time. The doctors shouted over each other, more oxygen, prepare another injection, his heart is failing. But the housekeeper stood firm, her voice cutting through the panic. You're giving the wrong treatment. It's not his heart. It's not his lungs. It's the allergy. You must act now. The senior doctor glared at her. Nonsense. You are just a housekeeper. Do you want us to risk a man's life on your guess? But one young doctor, standing near the medicine tray, froze. His eyes shifted from the housekeeper to the patient, then to the spreading rash on the millionaire's neck. His hands shook. He remembered something from his medical school days. An allergy could look exactly like this. He whispered to himself. She might be right. The senior doctor barked, prepare the defibrillator. But the young doctor's voice rose above his superiors. No. We need to treat the allergy first. The entire room went silent. Everyone stared at him. The young doctor looked at the housekeeper, then at the dying man. If we don't try this, he won't last another minute. The senior doctor's face turned red with anger. Do you realize what you're saying? If you are wrong, it will be your career. The young doctor clenched his fists. Eddie's voice shook but remained steady. I'd rather lose my career than lose his life, without waiting for permission. He grabbed the allergy injection from the tray. His colleagues gasped. Some tried to stop him, but the housekeeper's sharp voice pushed him forward. Do it now. It's the only way. He pressed the injection into the millionaire's arm. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Everyone held their breath. The machine gave another long, terrifying beep. Nurses prayed silently. The housekeeper's hands clutched her apron, trembling. Then suddenly, the machine's rhythm changed. Beep, beep, beep. Stronger, steadier. The millionaire's chest rose higher. His lips slowly lost their dark color. The rash stopped spreading. The room erupted in shock. Doctors stared in disbelief. Nurses gasped. Porters outside, hearing the noise, pressed closer to the door. The young doctor dropped into a chair, breathing hard. The housekeeper's eyes filled with tears, not of fear this time, but of relief. She had been right all along. The room was filled with noise, nurses rushing, doctors talking, the machine now beating in a steady rhythm. Relief washed over the staff. "He's stable," one doctor whispered. "It's working," another sighed. "We almost lost him," the young doctor said softly, wiping sweat from his forehead. The senior doctor, still pale, cleared his throat. "It seems she was right." His voice was heavy, as if the words were painful to say. Slowly, he turned toward the housekeeper. "We owe you an apology." All eyes fell on her. The woman, who had been ignored, now stood at the center of the room, her eyes shining, but her face calm. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She only looked at the millionaire on the bed, her expression still worried. She shook her head. "No, it's not over yet." The doctors blinked. "What do you mean his breathing is back? His color is better. He will recover." But the housekeeper stepped closer to the bed, her voice low and firm. "You think it was just the allergy? But it was not only that. Something else happened." The room grew tense again. The nurses glanced at each other nervously. She pointed to the millionaire's arm where faint marks showed. "I clean his room every day. I see his food, his medicines, and I saw something strange 2 nights ago. A glass of wine on his table. It smelled bitter, not normal. Just drank it before dinner." Her words sent chills across the room. "Wine?" one doctor repeated. "Yes," she whispered. "And when he finished, I found the bottle was gone. Someone took it away. I told the butler, but he laughed, said I was imagining things." The doctors exchanged uneasy looks. "Are you saying someone tried to harm him?" The housekeeper's eyes narrowed. She didn't answer directly, but her silence was louder than words. The young doctor leaned closer. "You mean this wasn't just an accident, not just food?" The housekeeper looked at the millionaire, her voice trembling now. "He is still in danger. And if we don't find the truth soon, whoever did this may try again." The relief in the room vanished. The doctors, once proud and confident, now looked frightened, because they realized they weren't just fighting sickness anymore. They were facing a hidden enemy. The doctors froze at the housekeeper's words. The sound of the machine filled the silence. Beep, beep, beeps, beat steady. But every person in the room felt a new kind of fear. "Someone tried to harm him?" the nurse whispered, her hands shaking. The senior doctor frowned deeply. "That is a serious claim. Are you certain?" The housekeeper nodded slowly. "I have served him for many years. I know his habits. I know his house. That wine was not normal. The wine was not normal. It smelled wrong. Bitter, sharp. I cleaned up the glass myself." The young doctor leaned forward. "If what she says is true, then this is not just a medical case. It's a crime." The room shifted. Nurses whispered nervously. Porters outside knocked harder on the glass, sensing something big was happening. The housekeeper's eyes scanned the doctors, her voice lowered. "And if it is a crime, then the person who did it could be very close. Maybe even here." Every head turned. Suspicion filled the air. The senior doctor stiffened. Someone inside this hospital." The housekeeper didn't answer, but her silence was enough. One nurse gasped. "But why would anyone want him dead?" "He is rich, powerful." "Exactly," the housekeeper cut in. "That's why money brings enemies." At that moment, the millionaire stirred slightly, his hand twitching on the bed. The doctors rushed to him, but his lips moved faintly, as if trying to speak. Only a broken whisper escaped. "Don't trust." The room went ice cold. Everyone froze. Don't trust who? The housekeeper stepped closer, her face pale but determined. "He's trying to warn us." Knows. Behind them, the door creaked open. A shadow moved in the hallway. Someone had been listening all along, and whoever it was did not want the truth to come out. The hospital room was heavy with fear. The millionaire lay weak but alive, His faint whisper still echoed in everyone's minds. Don't trust. Doctors looked at one another nervously. The nurses clutched their charts. The housekeeper stood closest to the bed, her body stiff, her eyes sharp. Then the sound came again. Creak. The door moved slightly, opening wider. A shadow stretched across the floor. Someone was standing just outside. The housekeeper's heart pounded. She turned quickly, but the hallway was dim. Figure slipped back before she could see the face. Only the faint echo of footsteps remained. "Who's there?" the senior doctor shouted. No answer came. The young doctor hurried to the door and looked out, but the corridor was empty. The reporters outside had been pushed back by guards. The nurses whispered in fear. The housekeeper clenched her fists. She felt it deep inside. Whoever had poisoned the millionaire was close, maybe even inside the hospital. And now they knew she had spoken the truth. One nurse trembled. "Maybe it was just a visitor." "No," the housekeeper said firmly. "That was no visitor. It was someone who doesn't want him to wake up." The millionaire stirred again, his eyes fluttering. He tried to speak, but his throat was too weak. Only a choked sound escaped. The young doctor leaned closer. "Sir, it's all right. You're safe." But his own voice betrayed his doubt. The housekeeper bent down, whispering softly in the millionaire's ear, "I won't let them hurt you again. I promise." But as she said it, the lights above flickered. The machine beeped strangely for a moment. Someone had touched the hospital power lines. This was no accident. Any more, the lights flickered. Again. Once. Twice. Then the room went dim. For a full second before the power returned, everyone froze. The nurses gasped. The senior doctor shouted, "Check the machines." The heart monitor showed strange spikes, as if someone had tampered with it. The oxygen tube shook lightly, though no one had touched it. The young doctor ran forward, checking connections, his face pale. "This isn't normal," he whispered. "Someone interfered with the system." The housekeeper's eyes narrowed. She wasn't surprised. She had felt it coming. "They're still here," she said. "Whoever wants him gone, they won't stop until he's dead." The nurses huddled together in fear. One of them whispered, "We should call security." But before anyone could move, the power flickered again, this time longer. The millionaire groaned, his chest rising unevenly. The machine's beeping slowed, the sound terrifyingly weak. The senior doctor panicked. "He's crashing again. Prepare another injection." But the young doctor stopped him. His sharp eyes caught something unusual. The oxygen mask had been twisted slightly, almost unnoticeable. He fixed it quickly and the machine's beeping steadied again. "Sabotaged," he said firmly. "This isn't medical failure. Someone is trying to kill him." The room went silent. Everyone felt the chill of those words. The housekeeper stepped closer to the bed, her face pale, but her voice strong. "They're inside this building. Maybe even in this room." The doctors glanced around, uneasy. Trust began to crumble. Every face suddenly looked suspicious. But the housekeeper wasn't watching the doctors. She was watching the door. Her instincts screamed that the shadow she saw earlier would return, and when it did, she would be ready. The room was silent, every heart beating faster than the machine's. The millionaire's life hung between life and death. The doctors stood frozen. Nurses whispered prayers, then dash Cree. EAK. The door opened slowly. Everyone turned. A tall figure stepped inside. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Watching every corner of the room, it was the butler. The housekeeper's heart dropped. She knew. She had suspected, but now it was clear. He carried a small black bag in his hand, and inside it, something glimmered, bottles, vials, strange powders. The senior doctor frowned. "What are you doing here?" "This is a restricted room." The butler gave a thin smile. "I came to check on my master." His voice was cold. Too cold. The housekeeper stepped forward, blocking his path. Her voice shook but was strong. "No. You came to finish what you started." Gasps filled the room. The butler's eyes narrowed. Careful with your words, but the housekeeper didn't back down. 2 nights ago, I smelled the wine. Bitter, poisoned. You took the bottle away before anyone could see it. You thought no one would notice. But I did. The young doctor's eyes widened. So it's true. He wasn't only sick. Someone tried to kill him. The butler's smile faded. His mask cracked. His eyes burned with anger. That man never deserved his fortune. He treated everyone like tools. I served him for years while he sat on his gold. Now his time is done. He stepped forward, raising the black bag. Nurses screamed. Doctors froze, but the housekeeper moved first. With courage burning in her eyes, she grabbed the bag from his hands and threw it to the floor. Bottles shattered, liquid spilling everywhere. The sharp smell filled the air poison. Guards rushed in at the sound, grabbing the butler before he could escape. He struggled, shouting, "You're all fools. He doesn't deserve to live." But his words were drowned by the chaos. The room calmed slowly. The doctors rushed back to the millionaire, checking his pulse. His breathing grew stronger with each second. He was alive. The young doctor looked at the housekeeper with respect. "You saved his life." "Not us. You." Tears filled her eyes, but she only shook her head. "I did what anyone who cares would do. I saw what you all missed because I was never too proud to look closely." The senior doctor lowered his head in shame. "We should have listened to you sooner." As dawn's light entered the hospital window, the millionaire stirred. His eyes opened slowly. Weak but alive. He looked at the housekeeper and whispered, "You saved me." And for the first time, the world saw the truth. It wasn't 20 doctors, not the wealth, not the power. It was the quiet eyes of the housekeeper that caught what everyone else had missed.